Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Project Marketing, what it is and why you should be using it. My name is Tobias Schroeder, and I'm a Content Marketing Manager here at SoftExpert. Today's webinar will be presented by Mr. Gus Oliveira, who is an international product and marketing manager at SoftExpert and has over 10 years experience in the financial and business development fields, working in large companies both in the United States and Brazil.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Tobias. In today's webinar, we'll be talking about ways you can better market your project to your stakeholders. And by the end of the presentation, I hope that you'll be able to understand why this is an important activity in your project management. Also, you'll be able to review what different options are available for you to use in order to include them in your own project communication planning. So, let's start off by defining what do I mean by project marketing. Project marketing is a planned series of tasks with the goal of promoting your project to a wide audience. It goes way beyond project communications because it's not just about sharing the status of your projects, updates, or other types of communications just because you have to. This type of marketing is more about the promotion activities that you do to get people to believe in your project, to absolutely love your project, and to want to take part in it. It's making sure your communications plan goes far beyond just the paper that it was written on and to its functional level. So, taking a marketing approach to your project does have an impact on your project success. It's not just about PR. In the research done by Peter Taylor back in 2014, 87% of respondents said that marketing activities have a significant impact on project success, with nearly half of them saying that it's critical to project success. Now, you may be asking yourself, why isn't the possible answer there's no impact here on this pie chart? And to answer your question, it's not on this pie chart because absolutely no one gave that answer, which is very interesting. This tells me that generally, people believe that project marketing is a good idea. You want to be able to talk about your project in a positive way. Now, the question is, how do we do it? How do we market our projects? What tools do we have available to us? When I was putting together this presentation, I first started thinking about the tools that we use here at SoftExpert to communicate with our project teams and stakeholders. The top 4 tools that I came up with were web conferences, using tools such as WebEx or Skype or any other. We use this to communicate with our stakeholders, especially when they are, let's say, in different countries, sometimes different states and different cities. We use instant messaging such as Skype. Status reports. This is an actual screenshot of SoftExpert's Project Management Solutions status report that we use to communicate with project sponsors on a weekly basis. What we found out is that people who read this report are most likely to be traveling, so they really appreciate the visual properties of the report and how they can quickly analyze its status. Project dashboards. Again, this is an actual screenshot of SoftExpert's Project Management Solution. This is a project management dashboard which is 100% customizable per user. With a dashboard, stakeholders will have constant, up-to-date information at their fingertips whenever they like. There's no denying that all of these tools are great when it comes to project communication. But the thing is, with these tools alone, you don't create engagement or change behavior. You need to do more to make people understand what you're trying to accomplish. You need to take actions. So, a good starting point is to, get a good message or develop a good story. It is very important to have a message about what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Think about, why are you doing this project? How does it meet the business requirements? How is it going to change people's lives for the better? You've probably heard this before, but you need to answer the question, what's in it for me? If you can work out what's in it for me for each of your stakeholder groups, you can target your project marketing efforts more effectively, and that gives you the chance to talk about the benefits. You don't have to have had worked in many projects to know that you're going to get resistance to change. You've probably already seen that in your stakeholders groups. People just don't like change. A good message helps you minimize the impact of changes. So, how should the story start? Well, the story starts with your vision for the project. Your project's vision should be very simple. It's got to be something that can be clearly stated. It's the road that you're traveling, It's the where you're going. Next, your vision has to be aligned with your business's goals, department goals, or the overall business strategy. Or even better, have it be aligned with all of these. And you should be able to articulate how that's going to happen. That's important because it shows there's value being delivered to help move your organization forward. The alignment also sets your project in context and makes the project relevant to the work and experiences of the stakeholders. Your vision should also be achievable. People should believe that you're going to be able to deliver it. It's got to be realistic because no one's going to support a plan that they feel it's got no chance of achieving the stated outcome. No one wants to be associated with something that they don't believe in it and that they already mentally deem that it's on the path to failure. It might help then if you divide your projects into different phases, especially if your long-term vision is something quite difficult for people to, wrap their heads around. Ultimately, you're developing a project message to enable people to clearly see what's in it for them and what's in it for the entire business. Most people think of project marketing communication as something that we do to people outside of the team, but it's critical that you start with having your team on your side. They're the ambassadors of your projects, and they consistently need to be selling the story of your project and promoting the benefits to the people they work with and the people they meet. They'll provide updates of the project as well, so they've got to be behind you in any marketing effort. They should not undermine your efforts. That's really what you're trying to avoid, because that's surprisingly easy with just a few offhand remarks to the wrong people. Project marketing should be everyone's responsibility. The project manager should also count on other people as delegates of project communication. That's because messages have a greater impact if your stakeholders hears the message from their peers and not just from you. You're supposed to be positive about the project. That's your job. But the message will have much greater impact if they hear from other people as well. People follow the lead of those in power, so identify which stakeholders have power, which comes, from different sources, and use that to build a network of positive supporters. Another practical issue is that everyone needs to be aware that the project communication is not the responsibility of just the project manager. And you, as a project manager, must tell them. You got to make that clear. Tell them what your expectations are. And don't just assume that they'll suddenly become communications ambassadors by you just telling them what the message is. They should be as on message as you are. Outside of your team, there are lots of ways to reach your stakeholders, but your message won't get through, regardless of how good it is, if you're not hanging out with the stakeholders are. I'm currently working on a project, and we use Skype for instant message and for conferences because that's what our business teams uses. Now, even though it may not be my preferred method of communication for video and audio conferences, it's a lot easier for me to change my habits than to expect my project stakeholders to do something different and change their habits. As project managers, we have to expect to flex our style and tools just to suit the needs of our stakeholders. We shouldn't expect the stakeholders to adopt new ways of working just because it's convenient to us. With that in mind, there's more work involved when you use that approach because it means using different channels to suit the needs of different stakeholders. But, that's just part of the job. Project managers are primarily focused on creating participation in projects. So, if you want to boost participation, those engagements, project promotion, marketing communication tasks, are all part of what you must do as part of everyday project management tasks. Tailoring your messages for those different stakeholder groups also means critically accessing what channels are available for your communication. So, even though your communication plan and your stakeholder analysis tells you that your stakeholders may like to receive information, let's say by email, I personally think you should vary the tools from time to time. It'll help keep the message fresh. It'll also help you reach a greater audience, and marketing is all about reaching a wider audience as possible to spread information about your project, as we saw earlier. There are lots of ways to communicate, and you don't have to use just those tools that I mentioned before. Here are some suggestions that you can incorporate into different mediums to help your communication efforts. You can use red and green status on project reports or incorporate that into different mediums. You can use it in presentations. You can use different types of FAQ documents, for example. You can also do things to reach a wider audience, such as have open meetings in different sites. You can also have conference calls, video conferences, WebEx sessions. You can then distribute long form and short form content. By long form, I mean materials such as magazine articles. And by short form, I mean something as simple as project slogans or a short status update. Another option you have is to also use roundtable discussions along with the traditional marketing materials like t-shirts, promotional pens, mugs, testimonials, press releases, sponsorship of events, demos, and so on. These are all great opportunities for you to be in touch with your project stakeholders, regardless if it's an internal project in your company or a public governmental institutional project. All of these things are great. However, you should keep in mind that communication is a two-way street. Just because you tell someone to do something and you ask for their involvement, it doesn't mean that it's going to magically happen. The tools that you use can't just push the message out. It also needs to be a way of pulling feedback in and keeping an open line of communication. Another reason to vary the tools you use is because, according to a study by Edelman Trust Barometer, people need to hear the same message anywhere between 3 to 5 times before they start to believe in it. And after that, the effect starts to tail off. It starts to lose its effectiveness. Like I said before, of course, it's beneficial to hear the message from different people, including from someone who is more senior to them, someone whom they respect. You can also do that by looking for ways you can include quotes from senior project board members and inviting people to events alongside you. So, you've got lots of communication happening. You've got different tools. You're repeating your message several times. And with all of that, you've got to be careful creating a balance because you really want to avoid information overload. People get fatigued by your message. You can probably give plenty of examples of marketing messages or advertising that you see so often, like commercials or billboards, that you are 100% sick of and you don't want to see it anymore. And unfortunately, there's no scientific method for working out when that's going to happen for each individual person. So I can't give you, let's say, an exact rule to apply. But my best tip is to create a communications calendar that runs along the rest of your communication plan. That way, you can easily see which messages are going out to which group of people and at what time. You'll also be able to judge if one audience is receiving too much or not receiving enough information. Lately, I've been using this method in my projects, and I feel that it helps display exactly what you're doing throughout the project. I've even incorporated it into my project plan. Another way to help balance your message is to be visual. I don't know if you know this, but YouTube is the second largest search engine that we have today with over 30 million visitors per month. So there's no doubt that videos and images work when you're trying to get your message out to people. A study from the University of Minnesota found that a presenter that used visual aids were considered 45% more persuasive, and you want to be persuasive about your project. You want to be able to persuade people of the benefits as a way to get them involved, and visual images and videos will 100% help you obtain that. Let me just give you an example. If I told you I was working on a construction project and I said it was 2% complete, what would you think of? Maybe you would think of a construction site, for example. But what if I showed you a picture? Here are some pictures to show you my project under construction. Here, the project is at 4% completion. Now, if I was a project sponsor, I would be excited to know that the project has broken ground and I can start to see something being built. In the grand scheme of things, I can see that the work started and it's actually being done. Here, now we have the project at about 10%. You can see that the foundation is being built and we're starting to see some real progress. Next, we have the project here at about 15 to 17%. You can start to tell what it's going to be. Now, the stakeholders know exactly what it's going to be, but those not directly involved, like let's say the general public driving by here, don't know exactly what it's going to be built, the shape, or for example, how tall it's going to be. Now here, we have the building at about 20 to 25%. Even though the stakeholders will acknowledge that it still has a very long way to go, it shows that we have the skills to complete this, and we're meeting deadlines along the way, showing the progress in a much more visual way than just through a status report. Now here, we've got the project at about 50%. At this point, we can tell the key features of the building, even though we're only halfway through. So, the project stakeholders could use the visual progress status to see the stages of the project, to ensure that it's progressing along the lines of the vision. You've also got the option to use video. It's not that expensive anymore, and you don't even need like a professional kit to do it, and it's something that we're seeing more and more these days. You can also do a mixture of different styles of videos, such as tutorials, FAQs, explainers, and so on. So you can see that you can still create something interesting and very engaging. Also, you can publish your videos on YouTube as a private video, so only those key people with permission will be able to see it. And that's a very simple way to promote the project, to reach a wide audience, and give a consistent message. This won't necessarily work for all projects, but on the plus side, it reached more people than, let's say, a town hall style meeting, because we didn't have to do it in real time, so people could watch the video whenever they wanted. Now, obviously, there's also a negative side. On the negative side, I had to rely on, let's say, phone calls, emails, surveys, and internet forums in order to get feedback, instead of hearing it from my audience and have them ask me questions face-to-face in real time. So, there are trade-offs in regarding the communication methods that you choose. One of the things that I make sure I do for all communication of my projects, including printed material or texts that may appear on videos, is proofreading. Now, I cannot stress this enough. You must proofread your marketing materials, or better, have it proofread by someone not involved in creating the material, because absolutely nothing will undermine credibility faster than spelling or grammar mistakes. Your audience will 100% focus on the error and ignore the message that you're trying to convey, which is not the response that you want. You want people to focus on your message about your project's goals, what's being done, and the benefits, and so on. Now, if you don't feel confident in your grammar, or if you're like myself, that you get too involved in the project, ask someone else to read. This is the best thing you can do. The closer you are to the creation of the material, the less likely you are to seeing errors, which is why it's key to leave time between writing and proofreading it. So, make sure you build that into your communication plan, so you're never sending out anything that was rushed or hasn't had time to be adequately checked. Another important thing is to always have a plan. We always have to make sure that we have a strong plan in place. Think about what tasks you must do, what budget you've got available, and what team member you have available. Think about who else must be involved. You may have to get copy clearance from corporate PR teams to carry out some marketing activities. So, approval must be built into the plan so you can have adequate time to get things done, so your message can go out in a timely fashion. The plan must reflect the context of your project, and it also needs to be aligned with what is going on everywhere else in the company. Project communication is always easy enough to plan, but your project marketing activities also need to be part of the plan that takes your project to a wide audience, so it's part of a joined up story. Your messages shouldn't conflict with messages from any other projects. Talk to other project managers, talk to the PMO, and check, because people don't receive information from only one source or from only one project. They receive information from multiple projects, multiple suppliers, multiple initiatives, and piece it all together. Tap into what else is happening in the business and tie into other projects, especially if they are bigger than yours. Connect your plan of marketing activities to strategic initiatives to make your story a chapter of an even bigger story. While you're talking about it, you can look forward to what you've yet to do, but you can also use the message to look back and highlight what you've already done. If you can set that current announcement in your project timeline and show how the project has evolved, and if you can demonstrate quick wins and links with other departments' initiatives that got the project team where they are today, then you're including your project in the context of the whole organization. That means you're inserting your project in that context and business goals overall, and you're an integral part of the organization. Part of your project marketing plan should be planning for crisis, because there will always be one at some point. Things always go wrong on projects. Sometimes those issues are quite small, but there are those times that the issues are quite significant. And how you deal with them reflects directly on you as a project manager and your overall project. So, given that you've spent a lot of time getting your project efforts right up to this point, you don't want to undermine all of that work by messing up the communication, around problems. It's also a great opportunity to reach a different audience with messages about how you're handling problems professionally and proactively. Now, there are some things you can do in advance just to make sure that your whole team knows how to deal with significant problems when they arise. And that starts with having a single point of contact to deal with communications during an incident. If you have a problem, quickly put someone as a single point of contact. It could be you, or it could be somebody else in the project team, but whoever you decided to be, make sure that everybody knows who to go to for communication updates and who will be asking them for status reports. Also, make sure that when they're asked for information by that central person of contact during a crisis, they have to, give that information as quickly as possible. So that individual will be dedicated to running the communication to all the stakeholders. Next, whenever you have a problem, make sure you're only dealing with facts, okay? Sometimes when things go wrong, there can be a lot of emotions around it, especially if people are trying to get, to the root cause of the problem. There could be a little bit of blame culture happening. So you've got to step aside from all of that. Forget about the emotional response and deal only with what you know is the truth, and just stick with the facts. Gather information from the sources that have complained or are concerned, so communications are responding to what people are worried about. You might be dealing with something behind the scenes, such as, a software bug that caused a certain problem, but your end users might be worried about something else. It's very tempting to just dismiss those users as unimportant, but from a PR standpoint, you really shouldn't do that, Their concerns are valid, even though it may not be a critical part of solving the problem. You've got to listen to what those people are saying, and then deal with what's bothering them, even if it means that you're splitting your efforts between fixing the root cause of the problem and behind the scene issues and dealing with some of the smaller problems that are worrying your stakeholders. Also, you need to be fast. Get your messages out there as quickly as possible. That's the best way to deal with the problem before it turns into something major. On a big project, for example, that generates some kind of interest from the public, you may also want to put somebody on site to control the media. Furthermore, you may also want to control your staff that may want to talk to the media and have someone close to the location of where the problem is to have, their ears on the ground. They'll be able to hear what's happening firsthand. If it's a big project and there's lots of interest, make sure to also get your corporate communications team involved, and they'll be able to guide you and give you lots of useful information. They'll be of great help to you. Most of the project problems that we hit, won't ever fall into this category, but the concept of making sure you're responding accordingly and having a dedicated point of contact is extremely important. Also, have an infrastructure failure backup plan. What I mean by that is have a plan for when infrastructure fails and either you have no electricity, no internet, or no phone service. If that happens, how would you conduct your project communication without, any of those resources? Now, this happens, and it's happened to me. I was in the middle of a project once, and we got this huge storm, and the power lines were damaged. We had no internet connection, and we had very, very shady cell phone service. Now, we couldn't rely on email, instant message. We could barely rely on phone calls, and we couldn't rely on people being near the computer. Think about that and add it to your risk log. The final point in crisis managers is to always stay on message. Everyone has to hear the same version of the story, regardless of their position. Because if different stakeholders are receiving different versions of the truth, this again will undermine all of your efforts. Your project story is the message, and that should be what you're communicating consistently. You shouldn't have one version of the truth for one group of stakeholders and something completely different for somebody else. Staying on a message in good times and in bad times also limits the impact of your message being changed. You can't stop people from talking badly about your project. And from a marketing perspective, when the message is positive, you absolutely want them talking about your project. Today, people can quickly share with their networks through social media or other methods all of their opinions. So, get your message straight, talk to people, and let them share your message with their audience as well. As you've noticed, people are a big part of this process, and people can stop projects, not crises. Being prepared in your communication plans for problems gives you a much better chance at controlling gossip and those unhelpful communications, therefore limiting the overall impact on the perception of your project. It's also important to recognize that the more you can hear what's being said through the feedback loop by people who are hearing your message, whether it's firsthand or secondhand, the easier it'll be for you to correct the story, respond to their concerns, or simply tell them more about what's happening. Feedback loops are an essential part of marketing communication because you need to know what's working and what's not working so you can know what to keep and what you need to change. A single thing you can do today to start managing feedback is to tell people how to give it to you. So, let's say you sent out a status report or you sent out a press release to the public. At the end of the article, include your email address or a simple call to action telling them to send you their comments. When you do receive an actual feedback, you need to close that loop by telling them what you've done about it. Now, in projects, there's a formal feedback loop in the form of the project implementation review that happens at the end of the project. With communication activities, you get more immediate feedback than that, especially if you're talking to someone face to face. That's an informal feedback, which is absolutely fine, but I think it's also important to build a formal feedback loop. It gives you, a chance to track how you're doing and how to correct your course of action if necessary. That's important because something you try may not work the first time and you might have to tweak it as you go on. Putting in the effort to do all of this marketing and to do all of this engagement to build a relationship with your stakeholders, it helps you because all of this dedication is going to give you a massive advantage when you need to make difficult decisions. When you've put all of your marketing activities into play, hopefully you'll be left with a wide group of stakeholders that understand your project and are excited to be a part of it. But as we all know, projects aren't always good news to everyone. Much of what I've talked about today applies best to positive messages about benefits, views, and contributions your project makes, which sometimes can be a little bit difficult for people, especially when you've got a hard message and you're working on a project that creates redundancies or you're outsourcing services. Then it can be even more difficult. My advice in that situation would be to just tackle it head on and be brave. You've got to talk about the difficult things. People appreciate honesty and clarity and know where they stand. Even if it means that, they may not have a job within the next few months. However hard the message, living with the uncertainty and the rumors is going to make things even harder. You can help people adjust to their new reality, but you have to have that first difficult conversation. Now, even though we have all of those communication tools available to us, in my opinion, face-to-face is still the best option when it comes to giving someone not so good news. So, to summarize then, we've looked at what is project marketing and why you should be doing it, as well as some tools to help you do it. Project marketing is really about taking your project communications to the next level, which is above functional communication. It's going to streamline your project communication planning by building engagement, helping you to promote your project's achievements, and also getting people to believe in it and want to be a part of whatever you have to offer. Now, all of the tips that I've given you today are great when it comes to managing your project marketing efforts, but you will also need a solution for prioritizing, planning, managing and executing projects, portfolios, and programs. SoftExpert's project and portfolio management solution is an enterprise software that enables companies to manage their projects, products, people, services and financials, portfolio, all by providing a comprehensive set of tools with features that streamline project management to accelerate project delivery with a low total cost of ownership. The software manages and automates project requests, planning, execution, control, closing processes, and automatically sends notifications to those people responsible for carrying out, the project tasks. It also provides several charts and reports for consistent and objective assessment of projects, resources and financials, as well as key performance indicator charts to compare results to the goals set for the project.
Thank you all downloading this presentation. If you have any questions or would like to get in touch with Gus, please email him at gustavo.oliveira@softexpert.com. For more webinars, please visit our website www.softexpert.com. See you next time.